It must be what, 10 o'clock in Germany?
Sorry?
It must be 10 a.m. there?
It's 9:47, yeah.
Oh.
So
So, you know, my colleague and I, when we were at the Economic Times paper, we met you 12 years ago in Chennai, where we did the story on business lessons from chess.
yeah, I remember it now. So.
It was such an amazing interview. I still go back and read it quite often. See if I'm getting the Q&A. Oh, I think a lot of people have already started logging in. They're sending you messages.
Yeah. Yeah, I see it.
There's a 10-year-old from Gujarat. Nice. It's on mute only. WhatsApp. Yeah, I can see the Q&A tab. So do I just keep clicking on that? Okay, got it. Okay, done. Okay. So we are good to go. Shall I start? Okay. Okay, I want to start by thanking everyone for joining us this Sunday afternoon for this webinar. I think, hundreds of people have signed up and a few of you have already logged in. So I think we'll start a little ahead of time. And thank you, Anand, so much for joining us all the way from Germany. It's so good to see you and hear you. So thank you very much for being part of this webinar. I'm Chandra Srikant from ET Now, and I will be taking you through this webinar. First set of questions will be from me, but we will open it up to Q&A and take as many questions as possible. Thank you so much, Anand.
Thank you and welcome all.
Okay. Anand, I just want to start by asking you, how has life for you changed post this lockdown, the travel ban that we've seen? You've been in Germany for the last few weeks. How have things changed for you on a daily basis? What's your routine like these days?
Well, so my original idea was to be in Europe between two club matches that I was going to play in Germany and then come back. And so from the first scheduled return date, I'm just over a month now in Germany. And there were some trends starting. There were going to be some events in which I was going to do commentary online. So it wasn't disruptive for me, but one by one, you could see that just every chess event just got canceled suddenly. So, now people are scrambling to play every online tournament possible. Online chess has exploded. So the number of people who are sitting at home and wanting to do something and going to online chess. In a way, this is nice for us because online chess has been there for a while, and people are slowly using it, but now they're almost discovering it in a hurry. In other practical terms, it hasn't affected me too much in the sense that here in Germany, besides some minor restrictions, I'm able to function like I would. But the only thing is, of course, you can't meet too many people. In fact, the rules say only one person at a time. So,
Right.
and the other, it's a very strange sensation for me to be here already for a month without going near an airport. That's quite
Right.
unusual.
In fact, that was what I was coming to. Chess is a solitary game, but it involves so much of travel. You're sort of constantly on the move in different countries, meeting so many people during matches, between matches. How is all that going to change for you after this? Do you see a structural shift happening in the way chess will happen in future?
I think there will be, it has already changed the chess world in the sense that by being forced to focus on the online version of the game for a while, I think the pie chart will look slightly different, if you know what I mean. Online chess will be bigger relative to, but it also depends whether how soon the world returns to some sort of normalcy and what that normalcy looks like. The current, my current impression is we will probably recover, but we will not return to normal for quite some time. And but I've all my tournaments all the way until September have been cancelled. So suddenly I've just really got a lot of free time. And after I, hopefully next month at some point I'll be able to come back to India. And then the question is still, what do I do there? So it's very strange because you can say that I'm going to train for your next tournament, but if it's 5 or 6 months ahead, it's a bit too abstract and you need to kind of keep forcing yourself to do it. I'm still playing, but it really feels unreal because feels like whatever I'm going to do, I have a lot of time. And so you can't get fired up the same way. But we'll see. In a way, yeah, you just have to accept it. Nobody predicted this. And for me, what's most interesting is that hardly anyone I talk to remembers the world before the coronavirus. But only 3 months ago, nobody knew a world with it. So,
right. I think we're already getting used to a whole new world, right?
Yes.
Right. And Anand, one thing that I wanted to ask you, something that a lot of people are grappling with right now, how are you coping with anxiety? There is a lot of anxiety all around. People don't know what's going to happen. There is no vaccine in sight, no cure in sight. And, the lockdown also is getting extended indefinitely. You are always someone who's had a lot of equanimity, a lot of sort of, very tranquil kind of demeanor. Are you able to retain that same calm even in the current situation where there is so much of anxiety all around? How are you training yourself not to become overly anxious, not to overthink the current situation?
I think first of all you have to accept something that's inevitable. I mean, this is something beyond our control and there's really not that much we can do. Obviously some behavioral changes were needed. And also, let's say people like me are fairly lucky. My profession doesn't require me to necessarily go out and meet a lot of people, and I choose to stay a lot at home. I'm quite lucky. There are lots of people in professions where the adaptation to the new normal is not that easy. And it's very nice for me to say, well, you should accept things calmly. But for them, the anxiety is necessarily better. I am lucky in many ways. And many of us are. I mean, if you look at the people in the medical community who actually can't just sit at home and isolate, they have to go and save patients, then you really admire them, even though you're not able to do very much. But you also get a sense of how many people are usually working somewhere in the background for you to enjoy this life that you have. And what can I say? It's when you see how clean cities are these days, how low the level
Right.
of air pollution is.
Animals
Yeah,
reclaiming the.
animals and things, and you see all this. You also think, well, there could be a different world in some time. I mean, maybe in some time we'll have to re-examine what is essential and what is not, and hopefully we'll learn some new habits.
Right. I just want to welcome all the new people who are signing in. A lot of them are saying hello, Anand, sir, from
Yeah.
various parts of the country. So
Okay, I'll
even if
just
we
type
can't
something
see
to
all
them.
the chat, we just started 5 minutes ago. So welcome to everyone who's saying hello to Anand. Anand, you've also been a very early adopter of technology. I think you started using computers to prepare for chess sometime in 1988, at a time when others were still questioning, its purpose and what impact it will have on the game. And ever since then, you've always sort of used technology constantly to learn and upgrade yourself. In a world today where we constantly need to relearn, unlearn, uh, what would your advice be to be a lifelong learner? How does one really do that? Constantly unlearn, relearn, not become complacent.
I had a few experiences when I was working with my team. So for the World Championship matches, I would usually have a team of 4 or 5 people. And one of the things I noticed then was when things that contradicted what you knew or thought you knew. So sometimes my trainers would just say something and contradict an opinion I had, an impression I had. And if you force yourself to stay quiet, then you might actually notice and learn something. Whereas if your first reaction is to say what you think, then afterwards, first of all, you tend to defend what you've already said. And second, you should let them speak without any interruption. And it's the best chance that your brain retains the essence of what they're saying. The same thing in a way with computers and technology. And computers, well, you don't argue with them because they don't argue back, but computers are constantly contradicting us. We have many intuitive ideas about the world. A lot of them are reasonable guesses, but still, computers will constantly point out that something's going wrong. And if you force yourself to look at these things, and by the way, it's not easy because very often, not only will this contradict something you believe, but it'll contradict it in a way that will make you uncomfortable. In the same way that in chess, you can feel uncomfortable when certain moves are made because you're just trained to think in a certain way. You have to overcome your resistance to learning. But mostly it's fun to, once you get past that initial resistance, it's a lot of fun. In a way, you get to ask a lot of the questions you always wanted to ask with no worry that the teacher will get bored or the other students will look at you funny. I mean, when you're asking a computer for suggestions, it just answers all your questions very patiently. And this is nice as well, a kind of oracle which just sits there and answers your thing. And the real learning, I think, comes from the questions you ask. So when the answers are so easily accessible in many walks of life, but especially in chess, when a strong computer can just give you a lot of good answers, then the question is to keep changing the questions all the
Right. And you have been doing this for what, 42, 43 years now, because you started playing chess professionally when you were 8 years old. So, I mean, at any point, did you become complacent? What keeps you going and, continuing to learn for what, over 4 decades now? I mean, most people get distracted by other things or, life catches up. What keeps you going?
Well, I faced the same struggles as I explain in a lot of chapters in my book, Mind Master. This thing about complacency, not relaxing, not being able to motivate yourself. These are not problems you have solved. These are problems you constantly deal with, and you have to relearn the solutions almost every time. You have to learn it again and again. But over a while, you get a you get a sort of pattern of what goes wrong and what works. And the important thing is to remember that. So every time when things are going well, you remember what are the things that went wrong the last time things went well. You try to remember those and you keep them as cues, to like alarms almost. And the same thing, when things are going badly, you try to think, well, how bad did it really get? Did I come out of it at some point? And that can help also. So it's very important, I think, to learn from your own experiences. But the most important thing is to remember that the world doesn't stop. I mean, even if you're doing something very well now, people will catch up very quickly. So you have to keep learning. And I always say that if curiosity is very good, but you help yourself a lot if you do something that you really love doing, because then the curiosity comes naturally.
Right. Anand, I'm going to take a break now and start asking some of the questions we are getting. A lot of people have been sending questions. The first one is from Ahan. He's an 8-year-old from Mumbai. He says, I'm playing chess from the last 2 years. How can I improve my game?
Right now, the best way you can improve is to practice a lot. Play a lot of games, with short time controls, 5 minutes or 10 minutes per game, and try to experiment a bit. And as you play something over and over again, you'll yourself find the questions popping into your head, because while you're thinking during the game, you'll suddenly think, what if he does that? And then he won't do it and he'll do something else. And but the question remains. So afterwards, if you try to answer these questions and incorporate them, you will learn. But I think practice is the only way you can get better, because it's only when you see something happening again and again that you improve.
Right. I'm just going to open up the Q&A pop-up as well. It says, how do you prepare for chess, Vishy, and how much time a day do you spend on chess? What does your training as a super GM comprise of? This is from Mandar Khatri.
Okay, so back before the time of coronavirus, when we had tournaments coming pretty soon and so on, then my attitude would be, these are the opponents I'm going to face, and what are the things I'd like to do against them. So the first thing is to decide what it is you want to do. This doesn't have to be fixed. It's just a starting point. Then you do all the work, the background work you need to make it happen. And as you go along, you keep tweaking it. So, you wanted to do something, but it turns out you can't do it because as you worked, you found that it doesn't work. Then you move along, you change that. And so you keep modifying the goal. A good way to visualize would be to say, I'm going to play Carlsen today. Then what you would do is you would take his games, see what he has done recently, identify what it is you want to do against him, and then try to prepare that as much as possible. But this is multiplied by lots of players. You're following maybe 50, 60 players at any given moment. And so you try to keep track of everybody. You then try to study it. And besides that, I spend some time doing physical fitness, because obviously I don't want to get tired during games, and you make time to get some rest. Right now, the reason I said before the time of Corona is because obviously right now it feels kind of funny. There's a lot of work I want to do, but the urgency is not there. But hopefully I'll get it back soon.
Right. We're also getting some questions on chat, Anand. One is asking the best opening for white. One is asking the best opening for black. Anything that you want to share?
I would say try several openings, and then the one that you feel happiest playing and the ones you have the best result is probably your best opening. Naturally, openings depend heavily on how you play them, so they're very subjective. There is no best opening as such, but you can look at your own statistics and decide that.
Right.
Okay, quite a lot of heavy chess questions. There's the refutation
against how to improve the middle game. I think they're going to make you give a full chess tutorial over the course of the web.
Yes. So how to improve your middle game? The main thing is to look at a lot of examples. Also, the middle game is a bit of a very broad concept. you should decide which particular middle game you want to improve. And then find the games that you have played in that middle game. Look at people who you think play that middle game very well, see what it is they do differently. And as you do this long back, you will get better in that middle game. By the way, this works
Right.
for openings and end games as well. So I won't
Right.
repeat that
One
again.
question. Yeah, Vishy, if I can just sneak in one question here. This is a question that I got from many people. How do you keep a calm mind in a high pressure situation? And this is particularly important for chess because the audience for a chess match is very different. You know, they are very well informed. Most of them would have played chess at some point, pursued it seriously. So, how do you maintain a calm mind and just focus on the game, you know, when there is so much of stress in a high pressure game?
Um, you try to stay as calm as possible, but of course that's impossible. Invariably during a game, you get caught up in your emotions. So the important thing is to have small mental cues. You should know when you experience something or you're having some kind of feeling, you'll remember how that worked out for you in your last game. And you'll have painful memories. You'll have memories of the last game you lost or the last game you won, and you'll remember things that you did during that game. That's a useful way to identify what is going to come next. Prediction is very, very hard, but it gives you some sense of what might happen next. So you think, last time I started to get very excited that I was winning, and then immediately I blundered. So getting excited prematurely usually connects with losing concentration. Therefore, this is something I should avoid. And so you try to learn like that. And you tweak it all the time, but sadly, there is never a moment that you simply learn a lesson. I tend to relearn the same lesson over and over and over again, and that's how it goes. You make the same mistakes quite often, but like this, you should have some ideas and some thoughts. You know, if this thing happens again, how am I going to do it differently this time so that I don't repeat the mistake from last time? That's the rough way you.
Right. We are getting some questions on, you know, websites that you would recommend for children to learn chess on, and also a couple of chess books that maybe you can recommend. These are some of the questions that I could see in the pop-up.
Yes. So to play chess, you can go to chess.com. And that's a site which gives you access to almost all the training material you want, all the opponents you can need. And the version for children is chesskid.com, and maybe that's a good place to start, and then you can work your way up. Besides that, there are other websites, Chess24, Play Chess, which are all quite good.
Okay, I hope everyone's taking these down. Chesskid, chess.com. Viswanathan Anand giving a whole list of recommendations. And books, a lot of people wanted books for openings, book for middle game. Any broad books that you would recommend?
Again, it depends. If you want to play a certain opening, then you get a book in that opening. You should typically look at the reviews and see what people felt about that book. But remember that these days, books get outdated very fast if they're about openings and all, because a book can come out today and in 1 month it's out of date. So that doesn't mean it's useless. It still allows you to see there is the overall state of theory, and there is what you have grasped. And so you can grasp a lot even from an outdated book, because it's still telling you a lot of ideas related to that opening. But opening books, I wouldn't get too excited on. I actually prefer watching training videos or commented games, because you absorb it better. Books, I would recommend things like game collections of famous players, things that are a bit more timeless, or end games, for instance. For this, I think books are very useful because it enables you to rehearse important material often.
Right. Anand, when you started playing chess, was a very hostile kind of sport. It was the height of the Cold War. The Russians would sort of be very overtly aggressive and hostile. Did you at any point feel that you must be this aggressive person in order to be taken seriously? How did you end up being, the Mr. Nice Guy of the chess world? How did that happen? Did it have to do with upbringing, with cultural roots? How did that happen?
Okay, first of all, I have to say that you have a person has a lot of misconceptions. When I first went into the world of chess, and in fact, I look back a lot on this in my book, because I went there with a very innocent impression of what they would be like. In fact, they turned out to be quite friendly and so on. But what is clear is that eventually I came to this point where you realize that people will do lots of things to win, a lot of different things to win. Most of them will be legal, but not all of them will be things that you would yourself feel comfortable doing. And how do you deal with that? In the end, I decided that the best would be that if I went with the things that I felt most comfortable with. And so, I tried not to do the things that other people were doing and try to, because I felt that in the process, I might be more uncomfortable than my opponent. But it's a mixed bag. You also realize that sometimes in a competitive situation, you have to be aggressive. You have to want something really badly. So in my life, one of the learning things was to find out how to channel my way of doing things into something before I could get the results that I wanted. And the second thing is, of course, I'm happy that people think I'm a nice guy and calm guy, but of course I wrestle with the same demons. It's just I try to keep them to myself. And so
I think it
so there's
also
an element of
helps
that as
that you
well, that
have
you may
an
not always see what's going on.
right. So who's the buffer? Is it Aruna? Is it your immediate team? Who sort of absorbs the pressure for you?
Aruna is a lot of it because she's nearest to me, and that's when you feel most vulnerable and most open, and so she gets the brunt of it, I think. But also there are others. I mean, for me, being able to play with my son, for instance, allows you to get rid of a lot of tension. Perhaps he's not aware of what he's doing to me, but nonetheless, it has that effect. And when during some of my difficult events, my team, my trainers, all of them also take a good part of it.
Right. We are getting a lot of questions on chat. I'm just going to run you through some of them. Why don't online sites have a black and white board? I think someone asked. Then one more person wanted to know the best refutation against the London system. That question kept popping up. So if you
Yeah.
can address
So
some of
I'll take those two. A lot of the online sites, I don't know the technical details, but there's almost never been black and white pieces offered, and you're right. But nowadays, if you can go into the board settings and find a color that you like, and I think even black and white pieces do appear. But there is some problem because most websites and browsers already have a black and white theme, and then maybe that's why they're not able to do it. But I've changed, on chess.com, I've changed my settings and I have my favorite colors, and you can do the same. London system, well, that's a very topical question. At the moment, I would say the plan with e6 and bishop d6 seems the most popular, but you can always go back and look at lines that have fallen out of fashion. So you don't need to follow the fashion. One of the advantages of computers is that because they're able to spar against you, you don't need to only see what other players are doing. You can ask a lot of the questions. So, if you want to try something else, just play against a computer, try different moves, and you might be able to find some alternative. But right now, the most topical is e6 and bishop d6, for those of you who know what that means.
Right. Which chess engine is better? That was one of the other questions that came up. Stockfish or others?
Yeah. So right now there are two favorites, and in fact they are playing a match right now, these two engines. Stockfish is one of them, and the other is called Leela. That is sometimes written as LC0 or something, but it's also known as Leela. These are two of the best. There are other good engines, but what you can do is also, you don't necessarily have to have the hardware yourself. You can rent hardware these days. So that is an extra option. And then you get to choose a very wide variety of good engines.
Right.
But right now, I would say Stockfish and Leela. Yeah.
Okay, guys, I hope that answered your question. This is from Rachit from ABM School in Bandra. He's a class 9 student. He says, I play chess for my school many times. I play against players who have won against me before. So how do I train my mind to win against them in future?
Okay, remember that when you beat someone, it gives you confidence when you play that same person again. It also hurts their confidence when they play you because they remember the last time they won. But this effect is not eternal. Remember that people can grow, and as they learn new things, you can adapt. Very often in my life, I had difficult opponents, but then I would meet them 1 or 2 years later, and suddenly they were not difficult for me anymore. Our understanding, our way of playing also evolves a lot. So mainly keep working on your chess. Don't think about, oh, I would like to play my favorite opponents or something like that. Just keep working on your chess overall, both against the difficult opponents and against the ones that you like playing. Because the most important thing is to keep moving.
Right. A lot of people asking that, I've started playing chess at 24, 25. One other person said they started playing chess at 32. Is there scope, I don't know, for a professional career, if you can sort of advise?
If you started at 24, 25, I would doubt it because most professionals these days usually have made up their mind by the time they're in their late teens. And you look, it is starting late. It doesn't mean you can't do well, you can't make progress. You can always learn at any age, I think. And look, there always has to be a first time for someone. So I wouldn't discourage you, but at least statistically, most professionals have started well beyond that time. There are a lot of cases, though, of people starting at the age of 8 or 10 and still doing very well. So that is fine, but 24, 25 is late in the current scheme of things.
Right. One question on which young players in India currently are going to make a mark on the world. I think some of them we are already seeing a lot of prodigies, but who are you very bullish on, and what do you really make about the future of chess in India, the promising young players that you're seeing?
Well, right now the three hottest are Pragnananda, Nihal Sarin, Gukesh, the three youngest grandmasters, and Sadhwani as well. He's also all of them under 15 became grandmasters, so you understand. And but there are many more, and I think one of the things that's most heartening is watching the depth of talent we have in India, especially at this age group.
Do you think we are better than Russia today, Anand, where we are?
In that age group, yes, by miles. Someone pointed out that the Russians have actually they have overtaken us in the top 10. So at the top of the world, but a lot of their kids are blossoming slightly later than ours. So I think between the ages of maybe 10 and 15, something like that, we are the dominant country on earth.
Okay, one more question on, does memorizing in chess hamper creativity? Is memorizing moves something that one should do?
Well, memorizing without understanding what's the reason, of course, it makes no sense. It really makes no sense, because in chess, I can move, you can take a board and then say that this is the correct move in this position. And I can move one little piece somewhere else and the move may not even work anymore. But if you understand why a move works in a given situation, which is also kind of memorizing, but memorizing with some context, you tell yourself, this move I must remember, but the reason it works is because that bishop is over there, something like that. That sort of thing doesn't hamper your productivity at all. In fact, it enhances it, because the next time you will look for more complicated connections like that.
Right. One person wanted to know your user ID on chess.com. Would you like to tell them?
Well, my public account is The Vish, and VISH. So obviously, like Viswanathan, but shortened, The Vish. So you can look for that.
Okay, The Vish, guys, that's his user ID. One question coming in from Vinay Vedula. He says, chess to me is a game where you have to anticipate the next move and also plan your moves. Have you ever come across a situation where you have anticipated that you might lose? And at that time, did you ever pray to God to help you?
Um, yes, I have prayed, especially when I was younger. I would pray a lot. Now it feels very transactional. You know, whenever I'm in trouble, I can't pray, and it feels too opportunistic. But of course, when I was young, I would pray that my opponent wouldn't see something or this or that. And quite often, when things happen that you don't expect at all, then you feel really grateful to someone, and yeah, maybe God.
Right. And one question coming in from Facebook. How should sporting bodies fight likely financial instability caused due to the coronavirus outbreak? Maybe you can give us a very FIDE-centric perspective. How should they prepare if there are not enough funds for tournaments going forward?
I don't think they can prepare for this. I mean, unless you take something like Wimbledon with their foresight in getting insurance or something. But in most sporting bodies will just have to, balance the budgets. And so they'll have to change the prize funds and reduce things till things return to normal. I don't think there's a way that you can get past that. So depending on when you think the situation will return to normal, you can start planning. Right now, it's pretty hopeless for them because they have no idea how long this will take. And perhaps my answer is not only applicable to sport. I mean, every walk of life is going to do the same thing. This is what we were used to. This is what we're used to. This is what we have now. And when will it get back to 20%, to 40%, to 60% of what it used to be? That's how it goes.
Right, right. And one more question that I wanted to ask you. This is coming from someone who calls himself Mr. Bean on Twitter. He says in Anand's book, he mentions he's no longer fixated with the results and it helps him not to be too harsh on himself. Would he have had the same success if he had this attitude in the beginning of his career? Or did being harsh on himself early on help him succeed?
I have no doubt that but there's a time for everything is what I mean to say. So once upon a time, being very expecting more and demanding more of myself was the key to success. And then there comes a point when that stops working and you have to find a different way of achieving the same result. So you can have the feeling that, well, if discipline and hard work worked for me the last time, therefore it should work for me the next time. But sometimes our brains respond to different stimuli and you have to adapt that. So now sometimes when I'm relaxed and I try to think why I enjoy the game rather than obsessing about my ranking or something like that, it can attain the same results in a different way. So you still need to work and all that, but how you motivate yourself will keep changing. And that's inevitable because if you have the same perspective when you're 20 and you're 50, then you've learned nothing also.
Right. One question popped up, who's the most fiercer opponent for you, Gary Kasparov or Magnus Carlsen?
Very difficult to compare. Obviously, both very difficult opponents, and not only for me. They just, amongst the all-time greats. I feel that Carlsen is much more is a much broader player than Gary. Gary's strengths were more focused, but impossible to compare in general.
Right.
I would tend to say Carlsen because it's my memory with him is more fresh. I haven't played Gary in 15 years.
Right.
But,
lot of questions on how to improve calculations, how to go about not making blunders and playing the best move. Maybe a couple of points that you can share. We are getting a lot of chess-related questions on the webinar.
Yeah. Sorry, what was the question?
How to improve calculations and what role does a strong memory play in becoming a good chess player?
Okay, so I'll give one broad answer because this question is coming in various forms all the time. How do you improve calculation? How do you improve middle game? How do you improve end game? How do you improve this? How do you improve that? It's always practice. You simply get better at it slowly. And also it's very important that when you're playing again and again, you are confronted with different situations. And each time you learn something, you may suddenly find that something which works in one situation works in another, which looks unrelated. And these connections are a sign that you're getting to be a better chess player. So for all these questions, the broad answer is keep practicing. If you want to improve at something, try to take a few examples of that situation and work on it.
Right. Uh, a lot of questions on how to help children play chess. In your time there were a lot of chess clubs. I mean, you started out at the Tal Chess Club. Magnus Carlsen, grew up playing against the computer. For children starting to play chess, what would your advice be? Should they go to the local chess clubs? Should they practice more on the computer? How should they go about
It's probably very helpful to play over the board with someone. It doesn't necessarily have to be a club. It can also be during chess competitions that you do that. But you can, um, if you can play with someone, a friend, you get together at home once in a while and play um, some games with each other. That is helpful because there are two kinds of learning that you have in chess. One is this kind of learning that you have with computers, where um, computer teaches you difficult moves and it teaches you moves that you don't always understand and you have to learn. The second thing is, which is as important, is understanding how other human beings think, because none of us think like a computer. We don't have that depth. And so you need to mix and match both. One giving you absolute answers and one giving you context and what you're likely to face at a chessboard.
Right. I also wanted to ask you, Anand, in your book, you've laid a lot of emphasis on, the need for preparation, planning. Um, what does all that mean in, the COVID era? Because there is nothing that you can plan for currently. We are living in an era of uncertainty. Nobody knows what's going to happen next. So how does one have discipline and, strategize when there is so much of uncertainty all around?
I feel that you can have some sort of routine. So let's talk strategy. Whether we come back in 8 months or in a year, we will still need the sort of things we needed yesterday. So what is the work you can do? What is the work that needs to be done on a regular basis, no matter when the world returns to normalcy, is a good way to start. A routine is also helpful because, as most of you have probably discovered by now, if you just let the day go by, then suddenly one day becomes 4 days and you don't know where the week went. So it's good to have some sort of routine, block a few hours a day where you get some work done, and just like it used to be before. And then you can enjoy the rest of the day. I mean, it'd be funny to pretend that we have to work all day, but having some sort of routine is very, very helpful. And you should still work on chess the old way. I mean, nothing changed in chess. The coronavirus didn't change chess. It changed the global situation, but we will still need to improve in these areas. So whatever you wanted to improve on and work on, try to do that in new ways, experiment. We have a lot of time now, so you can experiment doing this and that and see which one turns results. Also a good time to learn openings and middle games that you've never played at all. Now you have now actually enough time to explore these areas. So these are good ways to keep yourself sharp. And I'm afraid we'll only know the answer when we start again, but these are very likely to succeed.
Right. Is there a routine that you follow, Anand, in terms of fitness or in terms of practice? Has that changed now? Or, is there a playbook that people can perhaps follow based on what you do?
Each one will have to find his own, but my general routine is to have, do some exercise in the morning, some physical training, and then get a couple of hours of work at least. And during these hours, what I do is I do some chess work like I used to, but I also try to mix it up. I do some puzzles. I play some online games. Some of these online games, I agree with friends that we will train specific positions. So you can try this as well. If you're working on something, you can ask a friend, look, I want to test what I've learned in this particular opening or this particular position. Can we play some games in that position? That's one good way of practicing certain things. And you find your recall in that situation gets much better.
Right. I also wanted to ask you, how has having a family altered your perspective about your game? Does having a son at home or having a child at home make you does it make it easier for you to cope with, say, defeat? How do you cope with victory and defeat? This is something that a lot of people knew. And an addendum to that question, has having a family altered your perspective to some extent in the way you deal with victory and loss?
I think the biggest change is, of course, if you have a family, you have a young son, then it changes your priorities. I mean, chess simply cannot occupy the same space it used to. But on the other hand, chess will still demand the same attention as before. We always say the goddess of chess is very jealous, and you can't. So you know, you have to keep putting in the work, and you have to keep doing things like before. But invariably, you have other priorities, you have other needs, and that you have to attend to as well. I would say the best thing is having a son is a wonderful distraction from chess, but it's also emotionally very helpful. It gives you a lot of joy, and that invariably benefits whatever it is you're doing. So that helps.
Right. A couple of questions on the chat. People wanted to know the opening that you have used most and won.
My openings have varied a lot. I mean, I used to play openings that I hardly ever play anymore. I mean, 10 years ago, and probably when I was winning my world titles and all, I did a lot based on the Naidov and the Slav. The Slav, I continued to play into my world championship matches. The Naidov kind of went off the screen for a while. And nowadays, I play a lot of openings that I haven't played before. And maybe this is a new trend as well, because you follow what other people are doing and you experiment.
Right. A question from Srikant. How do you sort of preserve mental health generally, and in these circumstances? Is there something specific that you do to, be mentally agile, mentally well?
No, you just you try to remember what are the things that work for you, and you try to repeat them. Besides that, you know that certain thoughts are unhelpful, relaxing too quickly, getting worried. You know that certain things tend not to bring good results with them. So you watch out for them, and you train, you learn. There are no magical mental techniques. I mean, in the end, if I want to feel better about an opening, I have to study it. When I study it and I feel more confident in it, automatically every other area improves as well.
Right. People want to know, how many hours do you practice every day? Is there a regimen that you follow?
It depends. I mean, nowadays it depends more and more. Some days if I feel like working harder, I will work harder, and then I will take the next day off. This is also healthy because you realize that it's much harder to force your brain to concentrate than to work when your brain wants to work. And so you need to get this balance.
Right. What analogies, a question on, the analogies between chess and life, if I can expand that to, chess in corporate world and life, what really stands out for you in terms of strategy, in terms of thinking, in terms of planning? What parallels stand out for you?
Mostly, I would say the desire to keep learning is very important.
Right.
I mean, in every walk of life, the things we knew and we depended on even just a few years ago, it's not like they're unnecessary today, but they're modified a lot. And you have to be willing to learn and try new things and experiment. You have to understand what works for you and why, and then see how you're able to apply that on a daily basis. But I think fundamentally you need to keep working and learning. If you sit still, you'll start falling behind. Very much like a treadmill. You have to keep going forward, even to stand still.
Wow. So keep learning. That's the big message. This is a question on strategy. Does Machiavellian behavior creep in when you keep playing chess?
That's a very nice question. Look, Machiavellian strategies are one of the strategies that crop up very often in history. But I don't think it works all the time. I think Machiavellian strategies are helpful, and they may be a very cynical and realistic way of looking at the world. But look, if someone is always trying to take advantage of others and is seen as immoral, once other people figure that that's what you're doing, then that strategy will not necessarily work anymore. So I don't think there's any strategy which works for all time. Any strategy depends on catching your opponents off guard.
Right.
If you become predictable, then people know what to do.
Right. If you have to write a letter to your son, how will the letter start and how will it end? This is coming from my editor, Nikush.
I would start by mentioning the things that he likes and the things that he does very well, and then ask him to use that in new contexts and new situations. I would also tell him to try to enjoy something more. Sometimes he has the same performance anxiety. He wants to do something well and he gets worried. And I would try to tell him that, look, once you've done something for many, many years, you understand that the only thing that matters is did you enjoy doing it or not. Because we always feel we can't tell our kids that because then they might not take schools too seriously and so on. Even though we all know that later on in life, does anybody remember what grades you got in third standard or something? You know, it's like that. But I would try to tell him these things, but again, carefully, because right now I still want him to treat all his, every day, every year of school as if it was the most important. But there'll come a moment when we realize there are bigger things.
Right. A couple of chess questions on chat, Anand. One wants to know what is the best endgame book, and one wants to know who is better, Fischer or Tal.
Endgame book. I think nowadays you have these books like 100 endgames you must know, fundamental endgames, books of this sort, and they're nice because they give you a good snapshot of essential things that you absolutely must know. After that, I think the best is to take the books of or the games of people who are very good in the end game and see how they apply these things in practice.
Right.
Multiple questions on
who is better, Fischer or Tal, and one more asked who is better, Fischer or Carlsen.
Okay, look, Fischer's record is one of the best in history. It's also a very short record. He did it over 3-4 years, from the interzonal till the World Championship, and then he stopped playing. So you always have to balance Fischer out with his personal situation and the height of the mountain he had to climb. He had to take on the world single-handedly, so to speak, and so you always have to balance it out. Tal was simply a genius. I think Fischer's sporting record is higher than Tal's, but Tal, of course, went on for much longer, and but he brought so much beauty to the game that most people will still love Tal. And Carlsen is just very impressive right now. Not only is he having many Fischer-esque years, he's having quite a lot of them even.
Right. A lot of questions on how do I prepare daily. I think if you can just give us like a generic answer for this, because this is what everybody wants to know. How do I prepare every day? Is there something that they can follow?
The most important thing is to have a routine where you think there are a couple of hours a day which I must block and I must train, because that is one good way of learning. But you can also, you should find a way to experiment every day. If you stick to the same routine for too long, your brain stops working. So I would say experiment. One day study an opening, then the next day, I mentioned it earlier, find someone who's willing to spar in that opening with you. You get a much better perspective. Then you come back. Then learn something you would never have learned. Try that. you should experiment a lot, because that's the only thing that keeps learning fun.
Right, right. One question on, can we apply Sun Tzu's Art of War to chess?
If you have read the book, then I think there will be some parallels and you can go with it regardless of whether it's true or not. I mean, all these books about strategy and war, what they're telling you is not a specific strategy, but more a way of thinking, a way of identifying when a situation might require specific action. So yes, I mean, whichever book you read, if you find that at a certain moment you draw back on it, it's good.
Right. And your reaction to Magnus Carlsen getting beaten by an Iranian prodigy, Alireza Firuza, this, social media is buzzing with this. Did you watch the match? What did you make of it?
Yes, I watched the match and I enjoyed it a lot. I mean, at some point, Alireza took the lead and I was very happy because he seemed to be really settling in. But then Magnus fought back very impressively, won a couple of games in a row. And then there was this one game where Alireza could have just kept moving his rook and he would have won on time. But he just made some moves without thinking and Magnus gave a mate. At that point, I thought he would lose the match because that's a very difficult game to handle. But in fact, 2 games later, he had won. So he showed great mental strength.
Right. On the personal side, Anand, do you still remember the first time when you won a significant championship? Who did you call up first? And is the adrenaline rush the same when you win today, or sort of has it become par for the course? Do you still remember the first big victory?
Oh yes, I remember many of my biggest victories. I mean, in those days, typically I'd first person I'd call is my mother. But of course, in many of my biggest victories, my mother was actually there at the tournament, so I didn't have to call her. But when I won the World Junior in the Philippines, for instance, I had to find a way to go back and call them. I mean, telecommunications wasn't what it is today. But it took me like 3-4 days to get back home, and only then we could really celebrate. And this joy never goes away. Even tournaments I win today, you're just happy because, and now from a different perspective. I mean, once upon a time it was an achievement, but now it's more a feeling of you recognize the joy in winning and you remember that satisfaction. It comes across even now.
Right. This is a question that we're getting from Facebook. What do you play for fun with kids?
I play any game they want to play. So with Akhil, any game, any puzzle, anything he wants to do, I go with. Once in a while, I'll try to suggest something to him, but you can't really force that. And with nephews and nieces, again, it's mainly for fun.
Right. One more question. Do you see World Chess Championships happening via webinar in the future?
It is possible. It is conceivable. Plus, remember that already chess happens like this. Most of us follow games online. Most chess spectators are watching online, and that's where the video and the chat and everything comes in. The only thing is that the participants are isolated. So the next stage is you could bring the participants into the web, so to speak, and make them play online. But it doesn't affect the viewing experience at all because only the participants know that they're sitting in their home. Otherwise, everything else looks like it always was. So
right.
You're asking me, I would say that that's where we are already.
Right. We're almost an hour into the webinar. We're still getting a lot of questions, but I think we'll just wrap up in about 5 minutes, Anand. Just the last couple of questions. This is from Kapil of Kriya University. He says, how can educational institutions think of sport as a way to sharpen the mind rather than just leave it as an extracurricular activity?
I don't think they should think these things actually. The value of an we tend to say extracurricular activity like it's not important, but it's a huge part of stress relief. When you're focusing very hard on one thing, it's nice to do one other thing without having to do it well, and then still wanting to do well in those circumstances. And competing in a sport, trying to get better at it, that discipline, whatever steps you do to learn that, you'll often find works in your other areas as well. But I don't know that schools and education institutions can necessarily force that. So they have to, the important thing is they should have some events that you compete in as a team so that you get this bonding experience. You should still want to do well, and so it should be taken slightly seriously, but not so seriously that it becomes a second source of anxiety.
Right. One more question from Facebook. Has Bollywood approached you for a biopic? I read somewhere that, where you said you would like Amir Khan to play Viswanathan Anand, but have you been formally approached for a biopic?
No, not formally, but of course, Amir Khan is a chess player and actually plays very decent chess. So that suggestion comes naturally, I think.
Right. I'm very curious, Anand. You've always had a very calm kind of demeanor. What do you do when you become angry or upset? Do you lose your temper, and how do you deal with it? Because you've also spoken about how anger can mess with you while making decisions. So how do you really deal with it? Is there a mechanism that you've developed to cope with this?
I think you just have to accept the result somehow. I mean, even though I'm furious, and the main thing is not to let today's loss make you lose tomorrow's game as well. And on most classical tournaments, because I will have a good night's sleep between two games, you have a natural way of interrupting your flow. Rapid tournaments are harder for me because you've lost the first game and in a way that makes you furious. I mean, you could have easily done better. You then need to really put some cold water in your face, take a break, go out, walk, do something that separates you from the tournament hall so that you can start the next game in some decent state of mind.
Right. Last couple of questions, Anand. I wanted to ask you, you have been playing this game for what, over 40 years now. What is your ambition now? I mean, if one sees it, you have sort of done it all. World Chess Championships, Grandmaster. What is your motivation now to continue playing the game? What drives you? What's the biggest driver?
The biggest driver is I now enjoy the game a lot. I still find it fascinating. I still like competing in a sense. You want to see how good you are against all these youngsters and up and coming players, or many will already come. And I'm still delighted with every good result. I enjoy playing, but it's more relaxed. I understand some of them are desperately thinking how to become world champion, and I realize, oh, I've already done it. And you shouldn't enjoy it too much to the extent that you don't want to perform at all. But of course, it's nice not to have a lot of pressure on your back.
Yeah. Just a couple of questions. People are asking, who's your favorite player? Who's your favorite opponent? And how do you prevent yourself from becoming like a machine because you're constantly, playing on the computer? How do you retain the human element?
That's surprisingly easy. You will not lose the human angle at all. I'm constantly on the computer, but that doesn't mean that I'm able to think like a computer at all. In fact, the gulf is really big. So most of the time, the thing is to try to understand some useful insight in what the computer has done rather than, I mean, I cannot calculate 200 million positions a second, no matter how long I'm sitting in front of the computer. So the thing is to understand what is the result that the computer produces, and can I capture a little bit of that? Can I capture a little bit of that calculation discipline? These are the sort of things you want to retain, and then you understand it's impossible. You have to do it differently. If I want the same result, I still have to be very creative about it because humans cannot be like computers. So don't worry on that front.
Right. Your favorite player, your favorite opponent, a lot of questions around that.
My favorite players were Fischer and Tal growing up, and nowadays I think I watch a lot of players because each one has something interesting to show. Even if they don't do everything very well, you'll find that they have certain unique skills. Someone like Grishchuk will sometimes play a game in a way that I really want to try and imitate. So you can work like that. Favorite opponent, I guess someone who really loses to me regularly. That's all.
That would make a long list, wouldn't it? But Anand, as we wrap up, a lot of questions on whom do you think will dethrone Magnus Carlsen? I've got this question almost 10 times on the chat.
Yes. So at the moment, look, he's very far ahead, even by rating. Before the candidates, I thought Caruana and Ding were probably the closest to him, but this is also a moving thing because after the candidates, suddenly Nepomniachtchi and Maxime came up. And it's quite possible that in a few years, it'll be Alireza. So we'll see.
Right. Last question from me, because we are a business news channel. Did you ever, dabble with entrepreneurship? Will you look at maybe, because there are so many business and strategy lessons, management lessons in chess that you can apply in the corporate world. Is it something that you have ever looked at, will look at? Just that question from me.
I'm definitely open to ideas, but most of the time I felt that I did not have the time to pursue a project with the dedication and the commitment of time that it needs, and I haven't done it. But who knows? Maybe at some point in the future I might look at it because.
Right.
You do see the parallels between chess and business. So.
Right. On that note, I must profusely thank you, Anand, for giving us time. You patiently taken lots and lots of questions from all our participants, and I also want to thank everyone who's tuned in and they've been sending questions on chat, on Q&A across various platforms. Thank you, everyone. And he's answered most of your questions. So we will be putting this up on YouTube, on our website. So maybe you can go through that to get some of those questions answered. But on that note, thank you, Anand. Stay safe, and we hope to see you back in India very soon from Deutschland. But stay home and stay safe. Thank you for joining us on Meeting Now.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be with you all. Thank you all for your questions, even though I couldn't answer, but there were just way too many. But I hope you had fun. Thank you. And stay safe.